Hi everyone, welcome to my webinar. Today's topic is going to be on summarization and more specifically a strategy called the 3-2-1 strategy. During the time we're here together, we'll take a look at how to use this strategy and why it can be effective in your own classroom. The great part about participating in a webinar is that you won't get called on. You can stop me, you can mute me at any time. Hopefully you won't want to do that and you will find this not only to be engaging but beneficial to you in your classroom. After all, a teacher's time is really precious, so I appreciate that you're spending your time taking a look at learning about this strategy. Before we begin, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Ashley Burns and I'm a 7th grade English language arts teacher. I love teaching students about literature and I'm always excited to learn more about how to get students involved and invested in a text. So thank you for joining me. Today we're focusing on the 3-2-1 strategy for summarization. This strategy can be used after reading and it asks students to share 3 things they've learned, 2 things they find interesting about a text, and 1 question they may still have. The students at my school have shown deficits in their summarization skills, which is what prompted me to look for a strategy that would help them understand how to summarize what they've read. We want students to be able to discern the most important ideas in a text and ignore the irrelevant information, and being able to summarize is what's going to lead to better comprehension of a text. The goal of reading is to be able to construct meaning from a text, but comprehension is quite the complex process, and for students who struggle to understand what they read, explicit strategy instruction can be greatly beneficial. And actually, according to the National Reading Panel, there are 8 highly effective instructional strategies for reading comprehension development. 2 of those practices involve the questions the reader asks himself or herself about the text and summarization of important ideas from the text. We want our students to be able to pull essential ideas from what they read and focus on key words and phrases. So now this is the exciting part of our presentation. How can you as a teacher utilize this strategy in your own classroom? Let's go ahead and get to know the 3-2-1 strategy for summarization in a little more detail. After reading a text, students will first be asked to identify 3 important points that they have read. This should be what they feel were the most significant or most important things the author was trying to communicate in the text. Students will then share 2 aspects from the text they found the most interesting. This really helps students become more personally involved in the text and maybe create deeper connections as well. And finally, students can ask any questions they still have after reading the text, 1 question they may still have. Let's now go ahead and pause our presentation and watch this strategy in action. Using the link on your screen, you can take a look at one teacher using this strategy in his classroom. Now that you've had a chance to see this strategy in action, we're going to take a look at how we can implement this strategy in our own classrooms. Keep in mind, although I am going to demonstrate a lesson that is geared towards middle school students, this strategy can be used at any grade level and is useful for other content areas as well, aside from English language arts. If I were to have my students read a nonfiction article, I would begin by introducing any vocabulary they may be unfamiliar with or vocabulary that's essential to the understanding of the text. For example, if I were to read an article called "More Bees, Please," I would preview the vocabulary words depicted here and then ask students to look for any pictures or subtitles before they begin reading. I would then introduce the article by explaining that according to a new report, many species of bees, butterflies, and other pollinators are declining, but the world can do something about the problem before it affects our food. Using the link above, take a look at the article I'll be referring to while we use the 3-2-1 strategy. On this screen, you'll see an example organizer that students can use while using the 3-2-1 strategy. If this was the first day I was introducing this strategy, I would definitely model for students how to use the text in order to come up with 3 important points. Perhaps you can direct them to focus on topic sentences in each paragraph and have them write the topic sentences in their own words. Don't feel like this is just an activity to be done after reading. It would also work quite nicely as a during reading activity as well. In an article titled "Engaging Students with Text," the authors state that by having students make discoveries during reading, they will be encouraged to pay closer attention to the text because they must identify key facts and share their understandings of the text by writing and explaining meaning in their own words. If you're using this strategy after reading, not only are students practicing how to summarize information, but it's also a great tool teachers can use for a quick formative assessment. Please feel free to pause the recording and take some jot notes about how you would fill in this chart after reading the article "More Bees, Please." Here's an example of how this 3-2-1 strategy can be used in relation to the article entitled "More Bees, Please." As you can see, the important points from the text can be used to create a summary of the article in the top box. In the middle box, you'll see that students are to come up with 2 interesting facts. Having students come up with interesting facts really allows them to personally connect to the article, which is a great starting point for whole class discussion, even small group discussion. Students will feel engaged in the text as they share what they felt was the most interesting. For example, in this article, you may have a student who lives on a farm, and by generating personal interest in the text, it could lead to a discussion about your student's experiences with pollination. And finally, at the bottom, you can see that students can ask one question they may still have. By allowing students to ask a question they still have, the reader might become more motivated in further studies about the topic at hand. Perhaps after reading this article, readers will want to research more about pollination or even hypothesize what could happen if farmers diversify their crops. As teachers, we are always hearing about the latest and greatest strategies we can use in our classrooms. After researching this strategy and reading testimonials from teachers who have used it and found success, it really stood out to me that this strategy can be used in all grade levels. I love the flexibility of it. I also really like that you can use this strategy in other content areas aside from English language arts. I teach middle school, and I've used this strategy when my class read and discussed a unit based on Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. And also, don't feel that you are limited to using this strategy with a nonfiction text. The 3-2-1 strategy can also be modified to facilitate reading comprehension, especially for struggling readers, by asking them to provide evidence from the text to support their discoveries, interests, and generate questions. Just to give you another example, let's use the book Holes. As you can see, we're still using the same model for the chart, but we've adapted the questions for a fictional text. At the top, students can list 3 things Stanley learns at Camp Green Lake. In the middle, students can describe 2 characters and their relationships to each other. And at the bottom, students can provide 1 question about something they found confusing in the book at first, and then how they were able to clarify it, which is actually a really nice strategy to get them used to finding text evidence and supporting their answer. What's going to happen if we start using this strategy? We want students to interact as much as they can with the text, so we're going to see more student involvement. We're going to see that a teacher can use this strategy to informally assess students' understanding of key concepts and use this as a means of formative assessment. And we're also going to see that students are motivated because the discussion is based on the ideas that they have found, ideas that they have addressed, ideas they've brought to the classroom. The theoretical framework to support this strategy falls in line with Bloom's taxonomy. Having clear objectives allows teachers and students to understand and really clarify the purpose in instruction, and to also ensure that instruction is in line with an objective. This strategy has the potential to allow students to perform higher level thinking as they encounter and work with the knowledge they are learning through a text. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this presentation to be useful and engaging. I really appreciate your time, and I want to share a handout that you may find useful for your own classroom. Since it's in a Google Doc, it can also be shared among your colleagues. And if you could be so kind, I would appreciate any feedback you could leave me via the survey link on the bottom of your screen. Happy teaching, and thank you once again.